It's that time of the season again where teams are battling out to stay in their respective league. Now, I support Reading, who were themselves in a relegation battle in the Championship. Thankfully, they are mathematically safe, so I can now rest easy and turn my attention to the relegation battle in the Premier League. Now, this video is going to be focusing on Leeds, Burnley and Everton, because realistically, Villa need one win to be safe, pretty much, and Watford and Norwich are all but confirmed relegated. So I'm going to be focusing on Leeds, Burnley and Everton. So, starting off with Leeds. Since Jesse Marsch has come into the team, he's managed the team for 7 games. They lost 1-0 away to Leicester. They then lost badly at home to Aston Villa 3-0. But then they beat Norwich 2-1 at home in dramatic fashion. And then again, in dramatic fashion, they beat Wolves away from home 3-2. Then they got a credible draw at home 1-1 against Southampton. Then they beat Watford away from home 3-0. And then away from home, they got a good draw against Palace, drawing 0-0. Now, Leeds are 16th. So they are in the highest position out of 3 teams. They've played 33 games. They have 34 points, but a goal difference of -30, which is very bad. They have by far and away the worst goal difference, and that could be crucial. That could be a factor. So that's not good for Leeds' point of view. But more importantly, of course, they have 3 more points than Burnley and 5 more than Everton. Now, Leeds, they've probably got the hardest run-in, though. They have to play Man City at home, then Arsenal away, and Chelsea at home. That's their next 3 games. And realistically, they could perform well in all 3 games. You know, Leeds have got back-to-back clean sheets. They've only conceded 4 goals in their last 5 games. And actually, from Man City's and Chelsea's point of view, they'll look at the Leeds away game and think that's quite difficult. And Arsenal away, while Arsenal are performing well, they have had blips, losing away to Palace, at home against Brighton, and away against Southampton. So, although they beat Chelsea and Man United, they could just lose against Leeds. You never know. So I wouldn't be so negative if I was a Leeds fan, thinking that they'll probably pick up no points from the next 3 games. Because you never know. They could pick up a point against Arsenal and they could beat Chelsea or vice versa. You just do not know in this relegation battle. But worst case scenario, they don't pick up any points in those 3 games. They have Brighton at home and then Brentford away, which are 2 relatively easy fixtures for the final day of the season. Then you have Burnley, who are just below them. Now, Burnley's last 7 games, they lost 2-0 away against Brentford, conceding 2 late goals. Then they lost 2-0 against Man City, which, was almost expected. But then they beat Everton at home 3-2 in dramatic fashion. Then they lost 2-0 away from home against Norwich, and that was Sean Dyche's final game as manager. So, actually, if you're looking at the previous 3 games before that, they were relatively unlucky to lose against Brentford. Man City is almost a write-off, and then they beat Everton 3-2. But then they lost to Norwich, and they sacked Sean Dyche. Now, I, like most people, were completely stunned and shocked that Sean Dyche was sacked, and I made a video on that, and it just seemed crazy to me from the outside that he could be sacked, given that Sean Dyche was at the club for so many years, arguably the most successful ever manager, took them to Europe, their 6th consecutive season in the Premier League. It was crazy. But reading articles on The Athletic and hearing about rumours online, on Twitter and on YouTube, it seemed as though the Burnley players were just a little bit frustrated with Sean Dyche's style of system, and it was restricting them somewhat. And it seemed like Sean Dyche has kind of got stuck in his ways and wasn't able to adapt and change aspects of his game or management. So, since the Norwich defeat, they've got a draw, a point, 1-1 draw, away against West Ham. Although they missed a penalty, Nick Pope made some world-class saves. So you could argue that they were relatively fortunate to get a draw. But a good enough defensive performance. But then, back-to-back home wins against Southampton and Wolves, where they kept clean sheets, they were convincing in their wins, and they performed very well. But more notably, there seemed to be more creativity amongst the Burnley players, playing the likes of Connor Roberts at right-back instead of Matt Lowton, who's a more defensive-minded full-back, seems to galvanise the Burnley players and the team, but also Dwight McNeil seems to be having more freedom, and that was evident against Wolves, to be fair. He had a couple of really good chances. So, and Vidra also started and scored. So that being all said, it seems as though Burnley are on an upward trajectory and are more likely, given the form they're in, to stay up. Now, looking at what they have, they've played 33 games, which is the same amount as Leeds, 31 points and a goal difference of minus 16, so the best goal difference out of the three teams. Their next fixtures, Watford away, which they have to look at that and win. They have to win that game. Then they play Villa at home, Tottenham away, which is basically a free hit. Then Villa again, but they play Villa at Villa Park, and they play Newcastle on the final day of the season. So, Burnley's fixtures aren't too bad. Watford, they have to win that, in my opinion. And then Villa at home, I mean, to me, that's got a draw written all over it, to be fair. And then Tottenham away, Villa away, both very difficult games, especially Tottenham away, because Tottenham will be fighting for their place in the top four. And then Newcastle at home on the last day of the season is an ideal fixture, given that Burnley pick up the majority of their points at home, and Newcastle don't have anything to play for, although Newcastle are in excellent form at the moment, and in this calendar year they've played 15 Premier League games and won 10 of them. So Newcastle certainly aren't on the beach, so that actually might be quite a hard fixture for Burnley. Finally for Everton, since their 4-0 defeat against Palace in the FA Cup in March, they lost 2-1 away from home against West Ham. They lost away from home against Burnley 3-2. Then they beat Man United in dramatic fashion, winning 1-0, because given that was a relatively surprise result, given the poor form Everton were in. Then they played Leicester at home and drew 1-1, scoring a late equaliser. And then they were away against Liverpool in Merseyside derby and they lost 2-0. Although they were defensively decent, they gave up tons of possession and definitely deserved to lose that game. Although they were unlucky with a few decisions. But anyway, they lost that game. And that leaves them played 32 games, so one game less. But they have 29 points and a goal difference of minus 21. And arguably, they have the hardest run-in. Because, yes, they've got a game in hand over Burnley and Leeds. But points of what that matters really right now at the end of the season. And their game in hand, I mean, they have to play Chelsea at home, Leicester away, and Arsenal away on the last day of the season. And given Everton's horrific away form, you do kind of struggle to see where Everton are going to pick up their points. To be fair, Chelsea at home, Chelsea were very, very poor against West Ham. And with Frank Lampard being the Everton manager, you never know, something might happen and they might put in a great performance. I think if Everton were to stay up, it's going to be their home form. It's going to be the Goodison Park atmosphere, and it's going to be the fans driving the team on at Goodison Park. I really do think that. And the trouble with Everton is that they don't draw any games. They've barely drawn any games aside from Leicester at home. They basically seem to lose all their games and then pick up a few wins. So I think if Everton are going to stay up, they're going to have to pick up a couple of draws where they're expecting to lose. Maybe Chelsea at home, Leicester away and Arsenal away. Watford away, that's the massive, massive game, especially if they don't win against either Chelsea or Leicester. And then Brentford at home, again, they have to win that match. And they play Palace, which, Palace are a difficult team, but they are 14th and have tailed off somewhat since losing in the FA Cup. And Palace, they may just be a team that just want the season to finish. So actually, that might be a good fixture for Everton, given that on the same day, Burnley play Villa away, which you would argue is the harder fixture because Burnley are away from home and Everton are at Goodison Park. So, given what the teams have coming up in terms of games and the amount of points they have, I definitely think Leeds are in the strongest position, given they're 5 points away from Everton. And I think they're going to pick up a surprise result against either Arsenal or Chelsea. I can see Leeds either drawing or winning one of those games. And I think Leeds will beat Brighton at home. And I think, in my opinion, I can't see Everton picking up 40 points. So I think a win and a draw, maybe a win and 2 draws for Leeds will be enough. Just win and 2 draws just because of Leeds' horrific goal difference. So I think Leeds will do enough. I think they'll stay up. In terms of Burnley Everton, it's so hard to call because Burnley are in really good form, but they do have to play Tottenham and Villa away, and I just do not see Burnley beating Tottenham or Villa. Excuse me. I actually think Everton are going to stay up. I do. I think I can just see them picking up a result against Chelsea, given they're at home. Frank Lampard's manager. I can just see them beating or drawing or beating Chelsea. I think Everton will beat Watford away because I think Watford will be relegated by then. I think mathematically they'll be down by then. And I can see Everton winning either Brentford or Palace at home. Probably Brentford. So that means then if Everton beat Chelsea, if Everton get a draw, let's say against Chelsea, beat Watford and then beat either Brentford or Palace, that will give them 7 points and then they'll be on 36. And then I don't think Burnley will win twice before the Newcastle game. So I think going into the last day of the season, it could still be up for grabs. To be fair, and if that is the case, then Burnley have the easier fixture, Newcastle at home. Having said that, I don't think Burnley's form's going to last, and I think Everton will do enough at home to pick up points, and then I think they'll beat Watford. So I'm going to say Leeds will finish 16th, Everton will finish 17th, and I think Burnley will be relegated. I'm going to call it now. I think Burnley will get relegated just because I think Everton will do enough at home and then pick up that one win against Watford away from home. And then Burnley, I just don't think, apart from aside Watford, I don't think they'll win from now until the final day of the season. And by then, Everton might be 4 points away from Burnley. So I'm going to say Burnley are going to get relegated, but it's so close and anything can happen, and it easily could go down to the last day of the season, which will be very exciting. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens come the end of the season in the Premier League.